Hello everybody, thanks for tuning in. Feeling a little under the weather today, might sound a bit nasally. I think I have a cold coming on, not great. But yeah, I just wanted to do a bit streaming today, looking at some new Next.js stuff, which was announced yesterday. So yesterday was the first Next.js Conf, and they had a bunch of awesome talks. You can check those out on YouTube. But before all the kind of talks from people using Next.js, we had a keynote from the Next.js, the Vercel team, introducing Next.js 10, which had some really nice new additions, including internationalization routing, kind of out of the box, analytics, actual real-time performance metrics, like Lighthouse-based performance metrics, real-time rather than just kind of on build. With your Next.js apps, really cool. Also this Next.js Commerce kind of starter kit, which was kind of out of the blue, really cool as well. So it's like a starter kit for SEO, really powerful SEO product pages and things like that. We can have a look around here quickly. You can see how fast this is. This will be using the image stuff, which is what I'm actually going to look at today. The new Next.js Image Component and image optimization, which is something I think Next has been missing for a while. There's been some third-party libraries that have kind of polyfilled some of the kind of image optimization that you'd like to see in web apps these days. But they never had really a first party offering until now. So this is one of the areas where I kind of think Gatsby had a bit of an advantage, but Vercel and Next.js have come out with their own image component, which they've been working on with the Google Web team. And yeah, so it's just kind of a direct drop-in replacement for your standard image tag, similar to the Next link component. Yeah, and it's going to kind of get that automatic image optimization, so they'll kind of render smaller images on smaller devices, lazy loading, all out of the box for free. So we're going to have a look at this today with the GraphCMS project, because you can use the Next image with where are we at? Where's the reference here? Yes, you can use Next image with any image. So by that I mean you can pass it a relative path, or you can pass it a URL to a remote asset that might live in a CDN or a CMS or something like that, and they will do the image optimization at runtime rather than at build time, which is where Gatsby differs a little. So if you're using Gatsby image, you have to essentially download that asset locally to your project for them to build these kind of optimized versions of that image on build time. So that adds to your build process, and obviously if you've got lots of images in your project, that can be really slow. I will say that Gatsby also had an RFC this week for a new image API, which will seemingly work similar to the Next.js component, in that you can actually just pass it a local PNG file and or remote PNG file, I assume, and it will. The static image component will also kind of handle that optimization for you, whereas at the moment you have to, build a local Gatsby node to then query with their GraphQL there, so it's very kind of convoluted. So what I like about the Next.js one is just, this is an image component, you pass it an SRC prop just like you would with a HTML image, and it'll work exactly the same, and they'll take care of all that optimization. So let's we're gonna quickly work with a GraphCMS project. So this should be quick and easy to get started. Just going to add some dependencies to our project here, and we're going to be using a predefined project with GraphCMS, which has a few products in. I think it's like basically the examples project that we use for every example. So we should be able to get up and running relatively quickly with that. Okay, nice. So yeah, in this first one, what we'll do is we're just going to use just going to have an index page, which will have a get static props function. I think we've got some of this kind of boilerplate in another example somewhere. Let me see. Yeah, right. So we'll just take that. Yeah. So these, as I said, these examples are available on GitHub. I'll just quickly open that repository right now. Yeah, so this is a repo that shows how to use GraphCMS with a variety of front-end tools, variety of front-end frameworks and libraries. And as well as that, also how you would use some of the GraphCMS features like mutations, pagination, union types, and as you can see, we already have some Next examples here with MDX Remote, just a vanilla Next.js one too. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this here. We'll just quickly talk about what that's actually doing. We have to import GraphQL client there. GraphQL request. GraphQL request is just it's just a wrapper around fetch essentially. Yeah, so it kind of you just pass it a query and it'll run that query for you. It's just a bit of a wrapper around the vanilla fetch library. Doesn't have any cache or anything like that, so this is why we kind of tend to use this in some of these lightweight projects. We're just kind of firing off a request, getting some JSON back, and then using that as we need. And that's particularly important with this get static props because obviously these pages are built at runtime by Next. Okay, so yeah, in our query here, we'll request some products. We also want the ID, and I believe there should be some images. And we want the URL of the image, which is from the GraphCMS CDN. We also want the height prop and the width prop. So those are important when we're using this new Next image component. That we have those. Those are required props. Okay. So then, of course, I just need my actual React page component here inside of there. We pass in products to our props. Products is here. Just going to do just to make sure that we actually have everything back. Okay. So we'll just do dep. Then we'll open that up. Local host 3000. And there's an issue. Image is not defined on product. Interesting. Okay, so we'll have to go into GraphCMS and actually check the schema to see what that is, what that looks like. Although actually, I think I have this. We could probably check this GraphCMS. Sorry, this Gatsby image. Actually, no. Let me have a look. So we should be requesting the images, you would think, on here. Image. So it's obviously a one-to-one relationship rather than a one-to-many, which is fine for this purposes of this demo. Just update our query there. Next.js should rerun. There we go. We have our JSON for our. I don't think I've got the stringify command correct. I never know this. I feel like I say this every time I'm on stream. That I never know which order to do this. There we go. Yeah, so you can see we have this image object back, and we've got a few props in there. Height, width, URL, which are going to be important. Obviously, this is our actual image. This is what we'll be using with next image. So let's go ahead and actually look at the next image component. We're inside the Next.js API reference here. Yeah, so we've got a PNG file, which is totally fine. We can pass in src, width, height, integers, that's important. And here's the following props. So yeah, the width and height are the intrinsic dimensions of the actual source image. And that's important because what you'll find is, and one thing that they talked about yesterday, is that when those assets, those height and width attributes on the image tag are rarely used, and when they're unused, what happens is say you're loading a grid of images, and if you don't use those height and width properties on side of the image tag, what will happen is whilst that image is loading, the page layout is going to be messed up because they'll essentially be rendered as 0 width and 0 height, and then when they actually load in, they'll pop in and then it'll move the page around. So it's important to use width and height, and yeah, as you can see, it's required unless unsized is true. When true, can be biased. That should not be used with both the full images. Okay, so we'll just ignore this. Can't think of any use cases when you would use that. So we will pass width and height. We have the sizes prop here. It defines what proportion of the screen you expect the image to take up. Recommended as it helps us of a correct image size each image. So this must have a default, I would imagine. So this sounds like it's at certain breakpoints, what size image do you want to serve? What dimension image do you want to serve? So there must be some defaults provided there, as it doesn't seem like it's required. But we'll play around with that. Although it says it's recommended, so yeah, we'll dive in somewhere else and we'll find perhaps a better example of that used somewhere. Quality, again, just the scale. We'll just, yeah, I guess depend on the size of the images. It might be important to have that at 100. Defaults to 75. Loading. Yeah, so lazy loading will be the default, and it'll defer the image, the actual loading of the image until it's kind of inside of the viewport of the screen. So until that point, it wouldn't be loaded. We can pass eager to load that image immediately. Don't see why you'd want to do that unless it was kind of above the fold of the page. So then you would you'd kind of want that preloaded, so to speak. Although there is a priority thing here. When true, the image will be considered high priority and preload. So that would be what you would use for something, say a hero image or a header image at the top of the page, where you don't want that kind of lazy loading fade in effect. You want it kind of there, present, preloaded once they hit the page for the first time. Alright, so let's go ahead and use this. So it's pretty simple import on the next image package. This is worth noting that this is only available on Next.js 10, which just came out yesterday. So if you're trying to use this, be sure to bump your package. One thing as well to look at here before we use that, as just pointed out in the docs here, we should read the image optimization docs first. Yeah, so that's what I was just talking about. Width and height are required to prevent cumulative layout shift. So that's kind of, we'll click on that here, we'll get an example. Yeah, so you can see there, there would be an image loaded in there, and it's taking into account that image there will be loaded rather than it not being there, like so. Yeah. Okay, so it's important to use those. Okay, so we have to do some configuration in the Next.js config.js file. You can optionally configure image optimization. If no configuration is provided, the following default config will be used. So this is what I was talking about with device sizes. I think that's what's used for I assume that's what's used in conjunction with the sizes here. So I would assume that's the default for that. I'm not sure. You can specify it tells us here. You can specify a list of device width breakpoints using the device sizes property. Since images maintain their aspect ratio using the width and height attributes of the source image, there's no need to specify height in Next.js config, only the width. These values will be used by the browser to determine which size image you should load. So these are pretty common breakpoints for mobile, right up to iPad and browser, like laptop browsers and things. You can image sizes. You can specify a list of exact image widths using the image sizes property. These widths should be different than the width defined in device sizes. The purpose is for C images don't scale with the browser window, such as icon. If the width property of a Next.js Image Component matches a value in image sizes, the image will be rendered at that exact width. Okay, so yeah, this is good for icons and things. So if you're using loading icons using this component, this would be handy to use. You don't want those to be optimized essentially. Domains to enable image optimization. So this is something we're going to have to do. For images hosted on an external website, such as the GraphCMS CDN, use an absolute URL for the image source and specify which domains are allowed to be optimized. A loader, so you can, this is pretty cool. So you can actually pass in a separate cloud image provider to optimize images. So you could use ImageX, Cloudinary. Nice. That's pretty cool. If you didn't want to use Vercel, so if you're not deploying your Next.js image to Vercel, yeah, I guess if you're not using Vercel but using Next.js and hosting it elsewhere, then you might want a different image optimization tool. Okay, so we'll need to add a next config.js file to our project and actually specify the GraphCMS domain as a, essentially put it on the safe list, so that can't be, so the image component can't be abused. So let's just create this, and it's a module exports. Okay, inside of there, and it's a domains, and it's media GraphCMS.com. Not an array, Jonathan. Okay. Found a change, so we need to restart our development server. Excellent. Okay, so now we have this, we probably just want to kind of get rid of this and just create a basic kind of layout, a little basic grid layout for our products. And then we'll say okay. Yeah, so let's just throw the image component in. Let's see what happens. To import this, import image from next image. Nice. And then we'll pass it the source, which will be product image.url. The width will be product image.width, and height will be the same. Nice. So let's just check out the source here for this. So all we've passed to the image component was this source prop, which is the URL of the asset. And that's just a single image returned from GraphCMS CDN. I've gone the wrong way every time. Now, if we actually look inside of DevTools here, you can see the actual data source, the actual source for this image on our page is actually a local file from our cache. Or it's not, perhaps it's not a local file, it's obviously some kind of I don't know, it's interesting to see what they're doing here. But yeah, you can see the media GraphCMS URLs past this some kind of image function or something here, which is obviously returning what we need. And you've got the data src set here, which is the varying images depending on screen size. So if we kind of make this a bit smaller, it should essentially render. We'll be rendering these smaller images depending on the width of the viewport. So normally you would just have the biggest image and it would just kind of be responsively shrunk according to the viewport, but you're still having to load that larger asset in, whether that's a much bigger in file size or not. You're having to load that larger asset in on our mobile. That's critical for performance. Yeah, so that's pretty cool there. What else can we have a look at? Let's have a look. just dive back into the image reference here. Alright, so the quality, we can bump that up and down. We could look at the loading prop, pass in eager, see what happens there. Or priority as well. So that'll be preloaded before the page is kind of before it's painted. Yeah. It's cool. Let's go ahead and crank up the quality here. No noticeable difference there. I expect we will see a bigger difference if we crank this down. Yeah, you can see it's a lot more pixelated up. Granted, this isn't a very good image. It's just a black t-shirt or it's a black garment. Oh, you can see the caps there is pretty rough, pretty blurry. But it's pretty powerful that you can pass in that property and scale the quality of your images dependent on certain environments, if needs be. This is really nice. So this would be, this would save, this would be much more effective in a larger grid of images, especially if you're loading them all in at once, to be able to kind of bring those in without the layout being impacted, using that kind of those intrinsic width and height value properties. So I'm going to probably cut this short soon because my throat's actually quite sore. I feel like I'm getting a bit of a cold, so talking is actually quite uncomfortable. But yeah, this is just a quick stream just to check in and show off the Next.js image. Like I said, they had their Next conf yesterday, the Next.js conf. You can check out everything somewhere. I can't seem to find it right now. Yeah, so you can dive on the Next.js site, check out the conference. All the talks are available here. The keynote was great, really well produced. It had a kind of an Apple vibe to it, which is high praise. But yeah, very impressive stuff. I think next time it could be worth us having a look at internationalized routing and how that would work with GraphCMS's localization to build static localized pages from your GraphCMS project. But yeah, this was just a quick one just to dive in, having a look at the Next.js Image Component. Appreciate you watching. If anybody had any questions, just at me on Twitter. Happy to chat. Next.js, React, GraphQL, GraphCMS, anything. Until next time, thanks for watching.